Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1178, 1178, June the 31st, 2020, Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, of course, you know it is Wednesday, and on Wednesday, that's the day that I take out the trash and have some chicken. This will be no different. I haven't really decided what type of chicken I'm going to have. I haven't had chicken and dumplings in a long time. I love chicken and dumplings. Maybe I'll have some chicken and dumplings. Now, I actually have the frozen stir-fry type ones. They're actually pretty good. Actually pretty darn good. Not as good as Granny's homemade, but nothing as good as Granny's homemade chicken and dumplings. But not bad. Now, let's go ahead and, before I get into the news of the day, I just want to remind everyone that the primary reason that I do these videos and what this entire TowerGate video thing is all about is following the story, the Russiagate, Spygate, Obamagate, whatever you want to call it, following that story, which is what I've been doing since I've started doing these videos. I'm telling you though, the last couple of weeks, I mean, there's just nothing to report on. I mean, I scan every possible source I have, and I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen an investigation that's been kept so quiet. So Durham obviously runs a very tight show. We know there are things happening. We know the investigation is moving forward, although Attorney General Barr did say in his last interview that there's no doubt that coronavirus has definitely slowed down or caused issues with Durham's investigation in terms of seating grand juries and things and such. But he says that Durham is pushing on, very aggressively pushing on, but there's no question that coronavirus has affected his ability to convene grand juries, to get certain witnesses to testify and things and such. So, there's another element of this keeping coronavirus going. It's preventing Durham from being able to really do his thing, which is at some point he's got to seat grand juries. Now, John Solomon had reported back about a month and a half ago that he knew for a fact that there had been grand juries convened because he'd interviewed people who had testified in front of Durham's grand juries. But coronavirus comes along, and all of a sudden, that they're not able to convene these grand juries. So, keep this in mind. Another reason why the Democrats want to continue to try to push the coronavirus is as hard as they are, is because they know it's interfering with the Durham investigation. They're trying to do anything they can just to make it through to November. Hopefully, they're hoping they can defeat Trump, and once they defeat Trump, then they get a new president, a new attorney general. Boom, Durham investigation done and over. So there is a lot of things going on here, but the bottom line is there just isn't any leaks coming out of Durham's investigation. There's just no leaks. But we know that they're actively working on things because on issues that have been related to Michael Flynn, in his case, with Jeff Jensen being put on that part of it, they have provided information to the courts and to Sidney Powell as it relates to Michael Flynn, what they've needed to produce to get that case dismissed. But everything else, man, very, very tight-lipped. You don't really hear much. So I think that's good. Actually, I think that's a good thing. It tells us it's a real legitimate investigation. Unlike the Mueller witch hunt, which, if you remember, during the Mueller witch hunt, every single day there was leaks about, impending indictments of Don Jr. and the president himself and everyone around him and the whole 9 yards. We got over 2 years of constant daily leaks about how, Uncle Bob was getting ready to take down everybody. And then it turned out to be a big, basically nothing came out of it really, other than getting a few people on process crimes. And now we're finding out, which we actually knew back then, was all done using corrupt practices. So, yes, I do believe the Durham investigation is probably pushing forward, but there's no question that coronavirus is certainly causing issues with him being able to convene grand juries and things and such. but continue to dig every day into that story. That's the top thing that I look at every single day. It's the number one thing I want to talk about and report on, but it's just very, very, quiet right now. There just isn't much coming out. It's very, very little. So I'll continue to follow it, because here, at some point here in the very near future, the dam is going to burst. At some point this thing has to reach a conclusion. So, but I do believe that that's what's going on here. I think the coronavirus is definitely having an effect on seating grand juries, and that's kind of critical. If you're going to indict people, you need to convene a grand jury, present the evidence to them to get the indictments. So I think that that's an issue. So we'll continue to watch and see as things transpire what happens. But yes, every day that's my number one focus, just so you know that. But absent of any information to report on, I generally defer back to the headline news of the last 24 hours and comment on that, because there are other important things going on. But I wouldn't talk about any of this stuff, to be honest with you. If there was enough Spygate or Russiagate, whatever, information to cover a 30, 35-minute video, I wouldn't be talking about coronavirus, BLM, riots, or anything else. That stuff is all fairly secondary to me. But when there's nothing else really out there, that's kind of what I fall back on. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get to the news of the last 24 hours. Well, it looks like after 2 more blacks have been killed at the CHOP up there in the Seattle Autonomous Zone, the police chief there, Carmen Best, says it's time to close it down. She said this during a speech, where she actually gave this little speech inside the Autonomous Zone. Now, as she's trying to give the speech, there were protesters blowing horns and heckling her all the way through it in an effort to drown her out. And as you know, all the leftist corporate media is either ignoring these deaths, rapes, robberies, and beatings, or they continue to describe the CHOP zone as peaceful protests. Now, the barriers were supposed to be taken down on Monday morning, but Monday morning came around and nothing happened. Finally, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, DOT vehicles began showing up and removing the barriers. But just as fast as they were trying to remove barriers, the remaining protesters, those who refused to leave, were putting them right back up again. And so they're pretty much still there. So it seems that the mayor, the Jerkin Gherkin, Jenny Durkin, and the police chief are not on the same sheet of music. So it still has not really resolved itself. Durkin's in a very difficult situation now because she's put herself in a bad situation. Eventually, she should have known, if she'd have thought this through, it was going to come to this. She should have known that these people were not going to leave as long as she was permitting it. But she had to know at some point that this thing was going to run its course with the people who lived there. And that was eventually going to become a political problem. That was eventually going to become a problem for business owners and people like that. People who have to live inside that autonomous zone. So she had to know that the end game, if she'd have thought it through, was eventually going to force her hand, that she would eventually have to use force to remove these people, which she still has not really done yet. But things are eventually going to continue to build, and she's eventually going to have no choice. Now, you get the impression, watching this police chief and the various press conferences she's given, that she was probably not in favor of abandoning the police department. I think that that's something she was probably forced to do. And she is now clearly at odds with the mayor, the Jerkin Gherkin, Jenny Durkin. And not only that, but now the Jerkin Gherkin, Jenny Durkin, is also found herself in a dispute with the senior town council person there in Seattle who organized the protest at Durkin's home. She's also organized several other protests inside the city buildings and stuff like that. And so now Jenny Durkin has sent a letter to one of the higher government officials there in the city, wanting them to forcefully remove this town councilwoman, I can't remember her name, she's got a kind of a funny name. She's the one organizing all these rallies and things sort of on behalf of Black Lives Matter, but she's actually a Seattle city council person. So she's sort of organizing from within. But now, because she launched this and led, actually she was the leader of that group that went to Durkin's home, now Durkin has got a beef with this city councilwoman, and now Durkin's trying to get this city councilwoman removed because how she's conducted herself. So now you have infighting between Durkin, the jerk and Gherkin, infighting between her and the most pro-BLM member of the city council, who's sort of, on one hand, a member of the council who should be probably more independent, but she's not. She's full activist mode with BLM. At the same time, she's a council member, and she's organizing these protests and things which are antagonizing the situation. At the same time, the mayor is trying to extricate herself from the situation. And caught in the middle of all that, you have this black police chief who doesn't seem to have very much authority or sway because she was forced to give up her police precinct. And you can see that she's pretty frustrated in the speech. She said somebody needs to do something. And I mean, the obvious thing that crossed my mind is, yes, somebody needs to do something. And how about the cops? You're the police chief. So what that tells me is that she knows that what needs to happen is for the cops need to go in and tell these people, you've got, 30 minutes to vacate the area, or we're going to pepper spray you or start arresting you or whatever. But she's clearly being overridden in her authority. Now, you have to wonder who the sheriff is in that county out there in Washington, because the sheriff is actually a political elected official, who has certain powers. And the sheriff should be able to act without the mayor. He doesn't need the mayor necessarily to act. He has his own mandate. So I don't know what's going on with the sheriff out there. I've never heard anything from the sheriff in that county. You see the police chief all the time. You see the mayor. You see this councilwoman. You see all these people. But you never really hear anything about the sheriff in that county. And I wonder why that is. Probably a lefty as well, be my guess. This is going to end very badly. And we all know that. We all knew that from day one. And we're just sitting back watching. It's like watching, if you're sitting in an intersection and you can clearly see a car trying to beat a yellow light, and you can see another car trying to get the jump on the green light, and you just can see it, you can watch it, and say, uh-oh, that's going to be a crash. Boom! You can see it coming. It's an accident just waiting to happen. So, I guess we should all sit back and be entertained by all this. The only problem is that the optics of it are not good, because when a group of people see that they can basically walk all over law enforcement officials, public elected officials, and people like that, it empowers them. And that makes the problem worse. It exacerbates the problems, not just in that city, but around the country. Because everyone looks at that and thinks that's the example. They think, hey, if we raise enough stink, if we pitch enough of a bitch, the politicians and the cops will back down, and we can have our way with them. And that is why you don't let them get this started in the first place. That is why you don't get this thing started in the first place. She's put herself in this position, and, I would have to think that she's got to be terribly unpopular, but I don't know. I don't live in Seattle. Those people out there are pretty, and also I think a lot of times I make the mistake, and I would assume many of you as well, we make the mistake of assuming that everyone is as informed as we are, or that they're able to rationally look at something on their own and reach their own conclusions based on their own common sense, life experience, intelligence, whatever. But remember, these mass mobs and crazy leftists, they subscribe only to their own internal propaganda. They really live in their own little world. And they're not rational thinkers. They don't have much life experience. They're terribly not very smart, obviously. And they're in this bubble. And so, I mean, they're really not informed. You know what I mean? They're really not informed. Not the way they should be. They can't look at something and come to an objective decision about what it is that they're looking at. They have no way of being objective. So everything to them is subjective, and it's coming from a point of view of we're a white nationalist country, our founders were racist, capitalism sucks, black cops or cops get up every day looking for a reason to kill a black guy, white people want to keep the black man down. These are all things. They're all things that are the subject of that forms the basis for all their opinions, or the beliefs that form the basis of all their opinions. So they're not able to objectively rationalize anything that they're seeing. And so we just have to sit and watch this all play out. We know how it's going to end, and that's badly. Either way. So what can you do but sit back and watch? I'm just awfully glad that I don't live in a city with a liberal mayor, a liberal governor, whatever. I mean, not that our governor is the greatest thing since, Mike DeWine's not what I would consider a great conservative governor. But he is, at least ways, he is a fairly rational, fairly decent amount of common sense sort of governor. And we're not a... And he comes from an area in the state. He doesn't come from the southern part of the state where I am, where it's conservative. He actually comes from a more of the northern part of the state where it's more liberal. So I guess his general surroundings around him are more liberal, because he's definitely not as conservative as the people in the southern part of the state. But in Ohio, when you look at the options that we've had for governor, they just aren't that good. And Mike DeWine was a hell of a lot better than Sherrod Brown. I can assure you of that. So, anyway, I'm awfully glad that I live in a part of the state, the southern part of the state, where we do have very conservative, here in the southern part of Ohio, southwestern part of Ohio. And so, I don't have to worry about these types of things, but I believe me, I feel bad for those of you who are Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, what have you, who are trapped inside these blue cities and blue states. I mean, some of you just simply cannot get out for whatever reason. You got to live there. It's where your roots are, your family's there, your job's there, your business is there. A lot of people just can't pick up and move. I get that, and I do feel bad for those people who are in that situation. I'm just very fortunate that I am not in that situation, and very happy to be that fortunate. But y'all have to stay safe, and I wish y'all the best. I really do. Well, let's see. The Democratic National Committee, the official, the DNC, tweeted out on their official Twitter account the following tweet, that President Trump is celebrating Independence Day, and that it glorifies white supremacy. So basically they were talking about him going to Mount Rushmore for July 4th to celebrate July 4th, and that by doing so, he is celebrating Independence Day. And if you read the tweet, the way it's worded, it's not that they're saying that going to Mount Rushmore, where you have the four presidents there carved into stone, they're not saying that specifically is what's glorifying the white supremacy. If you read the wording of that sentence put out by the official Democratic National Committee on their official Twitter account, is that Independence Day itself, the very thing of Independence Day, July 4th itself, is glorifying white supremacy. Now, obviously, they did take it down pretty quickly after they put it up, but it's too late. I mean, obviously, a lot of people saw it. It's been passed around. Screenshots were taken of it. So we definitely know what happened. And you know, I don't know how the DNC believes that that's a winning election strategy, but the majority of the people in this country, I'm pretty sure, do not think that celebrating July 4th, Independence Day, is glorifying white supremacy. But this is how crazy these people are. And they have a lot of support. That's what scares the hell out of you. Here's something that's quite humorous. So we have Lambda. Of course, this is the legal people who represent LGBT on various issues. The LGBT lawyers is basically what they are. They are now demanding hysterectomies for men. This, of course, following the latest Supreme Court ruling on workplace discrimination against gays and lesbians. Hysterectomies for men. And this is serious. I mean, this is not like National Lampoon. This isn't The Onion. These are actual lawyers who are wanting to move forward with a legal case to fight to make sure that men can get hysterectomies. How can a man get his tubes tied if he has no tubes? Fallopian tubes, I think we're talking about. I don't know. These are the people who want to run the country. We had Quid Pro Quo Joe asked by a so-called journalist at a tiny little Q&A he was giving. He was asked if he is tested for cognitive function. He said yes. He's getting constantly tested. Really? Why? Okay, first of all, let's break this down. He's lying, okay? He's not getting tested for cognitive ability. Do you know anyone who goes to the doctor to get tested for cognitive ability? Unless they have something else going on. I know a lot of elderly people. I've had, grandmas and grandpas, elderly people, go to the doctor for their eyes are failing, their ears are failing, organs are failing, all sorts of things are failing. They're up in their 80s and 90s. But not once have I ever heard any of them tell me that they went to go see to a doctor to see if they're having cognitive issues. I don't know anybody that has ever gone to a doctor asking, I'm sure it's happened, I just don't know them, asking to get checked for cognitive issues, especially if you're running for president. So, Biden is lying. I doubt he's ever been tested for cognitive function. And if he did, why would he be doing that? It's not something the average person does. Unless you are having some serious issues. And if he did, where are those? I mean, there should be some records. Will Quid Pro Quo Joe, now that he's admitted this, now that he has admitted that he is getting checked for cognitive function constantly, shouldn't we be asking to see the results? I don't need a doctor's evaluation of Quid Pro Quo Joe's cognitive function. I can watch the damn video and tell you that his mind is failing and it's progressive. He is worse off now than he was early in the spring. He's getting progressively worse. You don't have to be a doctor to see that. And he's lying again. Well, cops across the country, I don't know about everywhere. I can't really say like here in my local community, I don't think our cops are all that affected by things. I'm sure they're paying attention. They're probably not happy with what they see. But I don't get the feeling looking around here where I live that the cops are particularly, have an attitude or whatever. I mean, they seem to be acting normally around here. But it appears that there are certain states, and I would assume states and cities, we're talking about blue states and blue cities, where cops are basically done. Specifically, we're getting numbers out of Atlanta and Los Angeles, where literally traffic citations are down like 60, 75%. Arrests are down 60, 70%. I mean, the cops are basically, they're not writing tickets, they're not arresting people, they're not doing anything. They're just driving around in the cars all day getting paid. We have a lot of them that are quitting, a lot of them, 49% I think is the number I saw in New York, now putting in for early retirement. And we're seeing that morale is at an all-time low. And there's specifically this story was specifically focusing on the numbers in Atlanta and Los Angeles. And yeah, the cops are demoralized. And why should you, as a cop, if you're in Atlanta or LA or one of these blue cities or blue states, Seattle or one of these places, why would you go out and put your life on the line for a community that will not stand up and defend you, but is rather cheering on the very people who are trying to demoralize you? And now they want to make cops liable so that they can probably be sued, pull you over and give you a ticket, and you don't like the cop's attitude, you can sue him. And I mean, I think there's something to be worked out there, but not what is being proposed, where you can just literally sue any cop anytime for anything. I think that what we need is like a citizen review board, and the citizen review board would function like a jury. Anyone who's a taxpayer in the local city should names should be randomly drawn, and there should be a meeting once every month or 2 or 3 where they take up any complaints made against cops and let citizens who are randomly selected be there to hear the allegations made, and that they should be able to render some sort of a judgment. I don't think that suing the cops is necessarily the way to go. Getting rid of bad cops is the way to go. Suing them is a little tougher. That's a little trickier. I see some benefit to that, but I see too much, way more negative than positive. That's a way like 80% negative, 20% positive sort of thing. I just think you got to get rid of bad cops. They're out there, believe me. I know they're out there, and it's not just 1%. It's more than that. But I think a citizen review board is probably a better way to deal with that, and not a bunch of hand-picked people who are friends of the local politicians and cops. No, I mean randomly names selected out of a hat of taxpayers who will be contacted maybe 2 weeks prior and asked if they would like to exercise their right to come and to the meeting and sit on this citizen review board. It wouldn't be mandatory. You would have an opportunity if your name was drawn, and just have a revolving sort of system like that where random taxpayers in the city can come in and listen to complaints made against certain cops and make certain rulings on that. I think some sort of a citizen review board would be a good idea, but I don't like the idea that you can just sue the cops. That I see a lot of issues there with abuse, and I think it could be dangerous to cops. A lot of decisions that they make in like seconds, like 1 or 2, 3 seconds, life or death. Boom, what are you going to do? If they have to stop and think, man, am I going to be sued? Let me think myself through this. They could put their life in danger, could put citizens' lives in danger. I just, I can't go for that. So I think we need to find a better way. Suing the cops is not, something I think we can do. When you're suing the cop, essentially, when he worked for the city, you're essentially suing the city. You're suing yourself. It's not coming out of the cop's paycheck or out of his pocket. He may end up getting fired, but the city has to pay the settlement. I mean, you're suing yourself if you live in the city. So I'm not for that. We need to find a better way. But yeah, if you're a cop right now, I don't know why you want to do that job right now. Now, out here where I live, I mean, the cops are pretty well, appreciated. If you get a rogue cop, he gets complaints. I think I live in the type of area where the cops are kind of careful around here. I mean, they know that people around here wouldn't put up with the kind of crap that you might see in the inner cities. But then again, a cop in an inner city, I mean, I don't know how you do that job, man. I mean, you are actually dealing with the worst of the worst. And I don't know that you can be Dudley Do-Right, Andy Griffith type cop. I mean, in Mayberry RFD it worked, but in Cabrini Green or Oakland or the Chicago West Side or something. I mean, I don't know if that type of policing works. I think you almost have to have some real thuggish type cops to even work in that environment. It's a very complex issue. Very complex issue with a lot of different angles, and I don't profess to have the answers. I really don't. I don't know. All I know is that I'm awfully damn glad I didn't select that as a profession for myself, and I feel bad for cops who have to go out there and do that job, and maybe some of them don't feel like they have another choice, kind of stuck in the job now. And they're taking a lot of abuse right now, and some of those areas, it's like where I live. I mean, it's probably nice being a cop. You cruise around your car all day, you write a few tickets, you get the occasional domestic abuse or whatever. We don't have probably 5 murders a year in my county. I mean, so it's not like a bad area to be a cop in. It's a pretty nice area. So they probably like their jobs around here, but in the inner cities and these really bad urban areas, and then once your city officials abandon you, when the public that you're trying to protect abandons you, I'd be out of there. I'd be done. I'd go do something else, man. I absolutely would. And this is going to lead to some really bad stuff, because it's going to be hard to rehire cops, to get cops to come into these places. No cop's going to want to serve in Seattle, in the Seattle Police Department. No cop's going to want to serve in any of these police departments where they know Atlanta or Los Angeles, where they're just being treated like dirt. What cop would want to do that? The cops want to get out of those police agencies and go to other places in the country where they can actually be a policeman in a decent town where they're somewhat appreciated. So the disastrous effects of what's going to happen as a result of this story, with the low morale, cops not writing tickets, not getting arrests, not following up on investigations, and all these sorts of things. Lawlessness is just going to get out of control in these liberal cities, and it's going to take some time. Eventually, they're just going to have to start electing conservative officials, and they're going to have to bring in some real ass-kicking people to come in there, and it's going to get ugly. It's just going to get bad, and it's going to get worse. And you can see it coming. I mean, if it's where it is now, think about where it'll be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Some point, someone's have to come in and clean up the mess, and it's going to be ugly. That's just how it is. Attorney General Bill Barr says that there are investigations into who leaked the fake Russia Taliban story, that's already underway. Yes, it's just another one of these probably mid-level type people, probably coming out of the NSC, who thought they could get another dig at Trump. But I mean, they really need to find out who these people are. These are dangerous leaks and illegal leaks. That was classified information that was leaked to the New York Times. And I do hope that they will bring that person to justice. And I think they probably know who leaked the Flynn phone call. I think that's probably falls under Durham's purview, and that's probably why we haven't heard about that yet. But I think they probably already know that. And finally, it looks like they've had enough of a majority vote in the state of Mississippi. They are going to redesign their flag. As you know, the Mississippi flag has a Confederate flag in it. And so it looks like they're going to redesign their flag and get rid of the Confederate flag. There you go. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you guys. Bye.